Hello friends! Today we're talking about the 1984 to 1996 C4 Corvette. And you know what that means.
You've never seen anything like this before.
A new Chevrolet Corvette like never before.
Yeah, time to get those hazardous material gloves out and go for a drive. But, kidding aside, the new Corvette was a big deal. It was
a Corvette superb in its engineering and technology and defiant in its performance.
Yeah, I get it. As I was saying, the new Corvette was a big deal. The C3 that came before it dated back to 1968, and some of that hardware was shared with the C2. It was ancient. The C4 was a huge leap forward in both styling and engineering. Underneath, an all-new chassis, including an aluminum front suspension. The body was still fiberglass and instantly recognizable as a Corvette, but obviously totally new styling inside and out, including
liquid crystal displays, 14 separate instrument readouts, English or metric, all updated 16 times every operating second.
Yeah, check out that 85-mile-an-hour speedometer. It also had
the world's first computer-activated manual transmission.
That sounds really high-tech, doesn't it? It wasn't. Basically, it was a standard Borg-Warner 4-speed with an overdrive tacked on the end. It was known as the Doug Nash 4.3, and you activated that overdrive with a button on the shifter. In 1984, the engine was also carryover as well, with only 205 horsepower. Still, the new Corvette was a huge hit, doubling production of the final year of the C3. I'm going to go through the year-by-year changes in a fairly quick order here, starting in 1985, which brought the new L98 engine and 230 horsepower. The convertible returned in 1986 for the first time since 1975, and those cars, plus some late production coupes, got an extra 5 horsepower from new aluminum heads. Anti-lock brakes were also new and standard. 3 years in, the Corvette was still heralded by the press as one of the world's greatest performance cars. And the 1987 model year came with another 5 horsepower, now up to 240, plus some other minor changes. And if that wasn't enough, you could now order the Callaway twin turbo package from the dealership, which came with 345 horsepower, 465 pound-feet of torque, and 178 mile-per-hour top speed, for almost double the Corvette's base price. The Callaway option would continue through 1991 with more power and a higher price tag as the years went by. I'm skipping some of the minor changes here. Like in our C3 video, get yourself a copy of the Corvette Black Book if you want to go into detail on every single minutia year by year. 1988 brought new suspension, new brakes, and coupes with a 3.07 rear got an extra 5 horsepower from a new exhaust. Like anything with classic cars, the 4+3 transmission has a lot of strong opinions. Some people say it's terrible, other people say, it just needs regular maintenance to be trouble-free. In 1989, though, that was no longer an issue because the Corvette got a new ZF-sourced 6-speed manual transmission. This brings us to the ZR1, the king of all C4s. It came out in 1990 and immediately started kicking all kinds of ass. Here's John Heinersey explaining the performance numbers.
ZR1's Lt5 engine develops 375 horsepower and on a test track clocks in at 4.3 seconds 0 to 60 and 12.9 seconds in the quarter mile.
Now let's see that again from inside the cockpit. That's where I think you can best appreciate Corvette's performance.
At the heart of the ZR1 was the Lt5 engine, a 4-cam 32-valve V8 designed by Lotus, which was owned by GM at the time, and built by Mercury Marine. And while it looks like a regular Corvette at first glance, the ZR1 had different doors that match up with the wide rear fenders, pulled out to fit the huge 11-inch wide rear wheels. The ZR1 was exotic and priced accordingly. Like the Callaway, it was almost twice as much as the base Corvette. It also had what GM called a power key, which you could switch on the dash. It let you go between the full 375 horsepower and a normal 200 horsepower, basically so that valet parking attendants couldn't pull a Ferris Bueller on you, which is awesome. In 1993, improvements to the valve train and cylinder heads increased the output to 405 horsepower, which is important because it's 5 more than the Dodge Viper, letting the ZR1 retain the crown as America's most powerful sports car. All told, Chevy built about 7,000 ZR1s over the years, including a handful of pre-production 1989 models that have since snuck out into private collections. Going back to the regular Corvette, 1990 brought a redesigned instrument cluster plus another 5 horsepower, now up to 245 for the regular cars and 250 with the ones with the cool exhaust. 1991 got the ZR1 copycat taillights, plus both versions got other styling tweaks as well. Then, in 1992, there was an all-new small block called the LT1. It had 300 horsepower, which was incredible. It gave the Corvette even more performance. At the time, this was an amazing engine. Today, if you own one, I've had 2 in other GM cars, you will come to know the pain of things like OptiSpark ignition, which sounds really cool until you realize they put a distributor underneath the water pump on the front of the engine. Or things like an intake that is sealed partially with RTV instead of a full gasket. But, all that said, the LT1 is still the one that I would get. In 1993, there were subtle updates to the engine, plus GM's first passive key entry system. Basically, you just walk up to the car and it unlocks, you walk away and it locks again, which is pretty neat. Oh, there was also a 40th anniversary edition with ruby red paint. There were a bunch of small changes in 1994, most notably you couldn't get cloth seats anymore. 1995 continued the small internal improvements till the LT1, and the big brake option, which was borrowed from the ZR1, now became standard. Oh, and they also made this amazing purple and white Indy 500 pace car. 1996 was the last year of the C4, and it went out with a bang. There was an optional upgraded engine called the Lt4 with the new valve train and heads. It made 330 horsepower, and you could only get it with the manual transmission. And then there was the Grand Sport, which came with the Lt4 in blue paint with a white stripe, and on coupes, the same giant tires as on the ZR1. Chevy only made 1,000 Grand Sports, which is one reason they often cost as much as the ZR1, even though they're not as fast. Which brings us to prices. In general, C4s follow the same pattern as other Corvettes. Special editions, rare options, and low-mileage original cars always get the most money. And remember, manual transmissions were about a quarter of the production, so those often do add value. Today, the high-priced cars like Grand Sports, ZR1s, and the rare Callaway go from just under $30,000 to above $50,000. We sold this 1993 ZR1 40th anniversary for $48,090 as one example. The base Corvette can be found for less, which means you can get a lot of car for the money. Remember, the LT1 cars do 0 to 60 in less than 6 seconds, and all of the C4s were designed with great handling in mind. Don't let the lower horsepower of the earlier cars fool you. They still had plenty of torque and the right gearing to be plenty quick. A really nice C4 can climb into the $20,000 range, but you can get a good one in the teens. Most of the cars we've sold on HemmingsAuctions.com fall right into that mid-teens to low 20s range. Go browse the Hemmings classifieds and you'll find hundreds more, some of which are under 10 grand. You'll sometimes see a 4-digit car at auction too, like this 1996 car with 144,000 miles and an automatic transmission that went for $4,700. Finishing up, I'll let that ad go one more time.
The most advanced production car on the planet is now called Corvette. Chevrolet is taking charge.
That was probably true in 1984, even if now part of the C4's appeal is that retro tech vibe. But advanced means different things now, and not all of it is good. The C4 is an icon with performance that's still impressive today. And now that you know a little bit more about this car, why don't you head on over to HemmingsAuctions.com. Odds are we have a C4 for sale, and on the off chance we don't, you can create a login and save a search for one. And, like I say at the end of every single video, you should also visit Hemmings Auctions because we have new cars going up for bids every single day. Plus premium classifieds, you can put an offer in right now. And of course, please sign up for the email newsletter. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.